I just spent a few days in Austin visiting friends. I live in Louisiana, so it's pretty much an all-day drive back home. On my last day, my old friend Tom messaged me on Instagram asking when I was leaving. I told him today. He said he lived about an hour outside Austin, which was actually on my way home. I hadn't seen Tom in years, and it sounded nice to catch up. So when he suggested I stop by, I figured, sure, why not? I set my GPS for Tom's address, and it estimated about an hour-and-a-half drive. Tom and I had been close back in high school, but had completely lost touch after graduation. We followed each other on social media, but hadn't really spoken in years. When I pulled up, his house struck me as a little old-fashioned. It wasn't dilapidated, just aged. The wooden porch creaked under my weight as I stepped onto it, and when he opened the door, I caught the distinct scent of old wood mixed with something rustic, almost like an isolated cabin in the deep woods. Tom, of course, was incredibly welcoming, pulling me into a big hug and ushering me inside. Some friendships just stay pure, no matter how much time passes. The inside of the house felt just as old as the outside. The furniture looked like it had been there since the 70s, worn but sturdy, and every step I took on the hardwood floors let out a faint, low creak. It felt very Texas, I guess. It was kind of charming in a way, like stepping back in time, into a forgotten era. We settled into his living room, catching up on life, sipping whiskey. By this point, it was probably around 5 p.m. One drink turned into two, two into three, and before I knew it, I was pretty drunk. The warmth of the alcohol made the room feel smaller, cozier, but also heavier, charged with a strange, thick atmosphere. Hours passed like minutes, honestly. We were having such a good time catching up that eventually he popped the question I knew was coming. "Hey man, you've got a long drive back. Why don't you just crash here for the night?" I hesitated, but he was right. I wasn't in any shape to be on the road, not safely. "Yeah, good idea," I slurred, asking if I could just take the couch we were on. He waved a hand dismissively. "Nah, I've got a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but it's better than the couch." That was good enough for me. We ordered some Chinese food, which arrived quickly, and after a while he led me down a short, dimly lit hallway to the spare bedroom. I didn't pay much attention to the inside of the room because I was hammered. We both were. But I distinctly remember the air in the room was still, thick and unmoving, like the room hadn't been used in a very long time, its silence almost oppressive. I barely had time to register my surroundings before I collapsed onto the bed, utterly exhausted and completely drunk. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. My mouth was bone dry, my head was spinning, a dull ache throbbing behind my eyes, and the room was swallowed by darkness, except for a thin sliver of moonlight sneaking in through the blinds. That's when I saw it. In the far corner of the room, standing sentinel-like against the wall, on the closet door, there was something hanging. At first, my drunken mind registered it as a long black trench coat on a coat rack, a mundane object, but as my eyes slowly adjusted to the gloom, the shape of it felt profoundly wrong. It had a broad upper portion, almost too broad, like shoulders, and the way it hung made it look less like fabric draped over a hanger and more like a sinister silhouette, a human-like form frozen in the shadows. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drum in the suffocating silence. I didn't remember seeing that when I stumbled into bed, but I had been drunk. Maybe I'd just not noticed. I rolled over, trying to ignore it, trying to convince myself it was just a coat, nothing more, a trick of the light and my alcohol-addled brain.
But I couldn't help myself. My gaze was drawn back, compelled by an unseen force. I peeked again. It was still there, a silent, unmoving sentinel. I squeezed my eyes shut, took a deep, shuddering breath, and forced myself to sleep, willing the image away. I don't know how long I was out before I woke up again. This time, it wasn't just discomfort that pulled me from sleep. It was a sound, a slow, soft creaking, like someone stepping carefully on an old, stressed wooden floor. My eyes shot open, instantly alert. The room was dimly lit now, the first faint hint of dawn creeping through the blinds, painting the shadows in hues of gray. I slowly turned my head toward the corner, and my stomach dropped through the floor. The coat was gone. I sat up so fast that my head spun, a dizzying jolt. My body was buzzing with a sickening mix of raw fear and leftover alcohol. I scanned the room, my heart thumping violently against my ribs, an erratic rhythm of pure panic. There was nothing in the corner, just an empty closet door, innocent in the nascent light. I threw the covers off, practically leaping out of bed, and rushed to Tom's room. He was snoring loudly, completely unaware of the silent storm of panic raging through me. I shook him awake, which took a lot of effort considering he was completely out from all that alcohol. He finally woke up, groaning, very confused, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "The coat," I said, breathlessly, my voice barely a whisper. "The one on the coat rack in the spare room." He squinted at me, his eyes still blurry with sleep and confusion. "What coat?" he mumbled. "The black trench coat, the one that was hanging on the closet door. It looked like a person almost." Tom slowly sat up, looking more awake now, his eyes beginning to focus. "I don't own a trench coat, man. I don't even have a coat rack in that room," he said, his voice flat. I stared at him, my mind reeling, waiting for him to break character, to say that he was messing with me, that this was some kind of cruel joke. But his expression stayed serious, devoid of any humor. "Come look," I insisted, my voice tight with desperation. He sighed, weary exhalation, but got up and followed me back to the spare bedroom. I pointed to the exact spot, my hand trembling slightly. "It was right there," I said. Tom scratched his head, a gesture of deep bewilderment. He asked me if I wasn't just dreaming, if it was just a nightmare. "But I know what I saw. I woke up and it was there, then I woke up again and it was gone." We stood in the room for a few moments, the silence pressing in on us, both of us feeling the same eerie, unsettling atmosphere. Tom finally exhaled, a long, slow breath, and shook his head, a reluctant agreement. He agreed we should check the house, just in case. We searched every room, every closet, every dark corner. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no weird coats hanging anywhere, no trace of what I had seen. Nothing that could logically explain what I had witnessed. Eventually, Tom tried to convince me that maybe I had been in some kind of half-dream state, a drunken hallucination, seeing things that weren't truly there. I wanted to believe that. Really, I desperately didn't want to think about the alternative, about a sinister presence in his home. As soon as the sun was fully up, casting its bright, undeniable light, I grabbed my stuff, mumbled a quick goodbye, and hit the road. I almost felt guilty leaving him alone after that, the unsettling feeling clinging to me. The whole drive back to Louisiana, my mind kept circling back to that horrifying moment, waking up to that coat-like figure staring at me from the corner, the way it was just inexplicably gone in the morning. Maybe Tom played a cruel prank on me, a dark joke, but to this day, he's never admitted to anything, and his expression seemed genuine, so I doubt that. Or maybe, just maybe, there had been someone in that house, silently watching me sleep from the shadows, and they decided to leave, a phantom departure, before the morning came, before the light exposed their dark secret. The uncertainty still haunts me.
I was 18 years old when this happened. I was on a trip with my parents and a friend of mine, Anna. This story takes place in Sweden during a road trip. My parents, Anna, and I were going on a domestic trip, and we had an 8-hour drive from home. The plan was to visit a theme park and stay at a campsite, but we hadn't booked one. The day came, and we arrived in the city where the theme park was located. We planned to visit it the next day, so we needed a place to sleep. Since we had brought tents in our car, my dad searched online for a nearby campsite. He found one that seemed good and close by, so he called it. Unfortunately, that day coincided with a big soccer tournament and the campsite was fully booked. Since we hadn't reserved a spot in advance, there was no space left for us. My dad called around, but we couldn't find any reasonably priced campsites near the theme park. Our only option was to find a camping spot in nature. We set the GPS to the nearest parking area in a forest to avoid parking fines. Eventually, we found a spot in a nature reserve. When we arrived, there were some people around, so we asked if it was okay to set up our tents there and whether it was a good place to stay. A woman who was hiking told us it was a good place to sleep and that there were no parking attendants. Based on that, we decided to sleep in a small, lonely gravel parking lot. We were surrounded by dense, ancient forest, and about a 10-minute walk away was a secluded beach. At first, we considered setting up our tents on the beach, but something, an unspoken intuition, told me it would be better, safer, to camp in the parking lot. As we got out of the car to set up our shelter for the night, I noticed a lone car parked further away in the lot. It looked like it was in bad condition, rusted and dented, and there was no one inside. I found it strange because it was already evening, the sun dipping below the tree line, so there were no more people at the beach or hiking in the woods. However, I didn't think too much about it at the time. I helped my parents set up our tents. They were sleeping in one tent while Anna and I shared the other, with both tents placed close together for comfort and safety. After struggling to build them, battling with poles and stakes, we finally finished. Anna and I made our tent cozy, stringing up a small battery-powered lantern, watched YouTube on my phone, and ate snacks, filling the air with the soft glow and quiet chatter. By this time, it was around 11 p.m. We wanted to sleep at a decent hour so we wouldn't be too tired the next day for the theme park. After a while, around midnight, we decided to sleep. At this point, my parents were already asleep in their tent, their soft snores a comforting sound. Anna and I was still scrolling through TikTok, the faint glow of our screens illuminating our faces, when we suddenly heard a metallic sound from the parking lot. It sounded distinct, sharp, like a shovel being thrown onto the gravel. We both jumped in fear, our hearts leaping into our throats, and whispered to each other, "What could that be?" Too scared to peek out of the tiny tent window, we chose to stay silent and listen, every nerve ending screaming. The sound had come from the same direction as the abandoned car. We then heard what I assumed was a shovel being thrown into the car's trunk, followed by the definitive slam of the trunk lid. We sat in suffocating silence, our hearts pounding like drums. Then we heard the car engine roar to life, tires spitting gravel, and it sped off as if someone were trying to get away quickly, desperately. My fingers, surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands, texted a friend from a nearby city, telling him where we were staying, giving him our precise location, a lifeline. He replied almost immediately, his message sending a fresh wave of dread through me, warning me that the beach nearby was known to be dangerous, with organized criminals often engaging in illegal activities there. We had no idea about this before. When I read my friend's message, I felt cold and deeply unsettled. About 10 minutes passed in an agonizing silence after the car sped away. Anna and I had started to calm down a little, our breaths less ragged, when we out of nowhere heard the loudest, most blood-curdling scream from a man coming from the woods. We were absolutely horrified, paralyzed by the sound, a primal shriek of pure agony. I immediately texted my mom, telling her we just heard a loud scream.
When she didn't respond, I called her phone to wake her up. She finally answered, groggy with sleep, and said neither she nor my dad heard anything. She reassured me that it was probably nothing serious, a fox or an owl, but at that moment, in the dead of the night, I couldn't think of any normal, rational reason for someone to scream like that. Anna and I crawled onto the blankets, huddling together, terrified, not knowing what was happening outside our thin tent walls. Every minute felt like an hour, the hands of the clock dragging by. Even though it was well past midnight, we were too scared to sleep. Suddenly, everything became eerily silent. The crickets stopped chirping. The wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, my blood ran cold. I heard footsteps. Someone was walking around our tents, moving stealthily, carefully, deliberately. Anna and I sat up, frozen in fear, our eyes wide with unspoken terror. I put my phone down so that its light wouldn't accidentally illuminate the tent, betraying our presence.
My heart was racing, a frantic hummingbird trapped in my chest, and I could hear my own pulse thumping in my ears. There was no logical reason for anyone to be walking around our tents in the middle of the forest at this hour. The footsteps moved around our tent first, a slow, methodical circuit, then toward my parents' tent, then circled around our car, which was parked nearby. The person stopped and seemed to be looking at our tents for a moment, a prolonged, unsettling pause. There was complete silence again. Then I heard the same car from earlier returning, its engine roaring, tires spitting gravel. Its headlights suddenly lit up our tents, a blinding, terrifying beam, and Anna and I quickly laid down, pressing ourselves against the ground to avoid being seen, to disappear into the shadows. I gathered the courage to peek through the small tent window, a tiny slit of desperate vision. I saw the car door slam shut before it sped off again, tires screeching, disappearing into the darkness. I felt a brief, fleeting moment of relief when the person left. From my vantage point, I could see the road they had driven down. 5 minutes later, I saw another car approaching fast. It was a police car, its siren silent, lights flashing, racing in the same direction the other car had gone. Nothing else happened after that. Anna and I were still incredibly shaken, so we decided to sit in the locked car to feel safer, its metal frame a stronger shield than the tent. I stayed awake until around 5 a.m., keeping watch over the forest, my eyes scanning the shadows, while Anna, exhausted, eventually fell asleep beside me. After about an hour, when the first hint of dawn began to paint the sky, we went back to our tent and, out of sheer exhaustion, finally fell asleep. We woke up around 9 a.m., completely drained, our bodies aching. I told my mom everything that happened, and she revealed that she had also heard the footsteps. But when the person was near their tent, she had also heard heavy breathing, like the kind you hear in horror movies during a scary phone call. She had been terrified too, paralyzed by fear. However, my dad had slept through the whole thing, oblivious, so we had to tell him the story from the beginning. Without hesitation, we immediately packed our things, stuffing the tents quickly into the car, eager to leave as soon as possible. None of us wanted to stay there any longer. Despite the terrifying night, we had a good time at the theme park later that day, a surreal escape. However, that evening, haunted by the memories, I decided to research the forest where we had camped. What I found made my stomach drop with a sickening lurch. Just a short time before our visit, a man had been murdered there, stabbed to death due to gang-related debts. Even more disturbingly, 2 men had gone missing from that exact beach and had never been found. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if the person walking around our tents was a dangerous individual, checking to see if there were any witnesses? What if we had been in serious, life-threatening danger without even fully realizing it until it was almost too late? Even now, I still think about that night. Who made that horrifying scream, a sound that chills me to my core? And why was someone using a shovel in the middle of the night in a forest? And the police, what exactly were they chasing? I guess I'll never know. The questions linger, forever unanswered, a chilling echo in my mind.
This is a story that still haunts me when I think about it, even though I was so young when it happened. 6 years old is around the age where a lot of my childhood memories start to become more clear, like sunlight breaking through fog. I have one sibling, my older brother Keith. Keith is 2 years older than me, so at the time he was 8 when I was 6. We had a strict bedtime, 8:30 p.m. If I didn't abide by it, or if our dad caught either of us up past our bedtime, we'd be in serious trouble. Our dad was always strict with us as kids, his rules firm and unyielding. Honestly, I don't remember if this happened on a school night or not, but I woke up in the middle of the night to Keith shaking me awake. Keith and I shared a big bedroom upstairs in the house, a sprawling space with 2 beds. My parents' room was on the first floor of the house, a floor below us. I was confused why Keith was waking me up until he told me in a hushed whisper to be quiet and listen. And I did listen, and I heard exactly what he was talking about. It was our mom's voice, soft and low, calling for us from downstairs. But it wasn't her usual clear maternal tone. It was a very quiet, almost eerie whisper-type voice, like a secret being shared with the darkness. I was about to get up, eager to go answer our mom, but my brother, his eyes wide and serious in the dim light, told me not to. He said, his voice barely audible, that he didn't think it was Mom. I told him to stop trying to scare me. I remember being so mad at him, annoyed by his antics, but he just urged me closer. He told me to go closer to the door and listen. So I got up, my bare feet silent on the carpet, and went towards the bedroom door. Right outside of our bedroom door was a small, short hall that led to the bathroom and another bedroom that our grandma would sleep in whenever she'd stay over. Directly to the right, when you left our bedroom, was the stairway downstairs, which also had a door at the top. I pressed my ear against the cold wood of the bedroom door, and I heard the voice clearer now. It distinctly said, in what sounded like our mom's voice, calling our names, softly, insistently. Keith? Mikey. I whispered to Keith, "That's Mom." And he just shook his head, his face pale in the faint moonlight. "No, it's not," he insisted, his voice barely a breath. Somehow, as a 6-year-old, and as the typically more timid little brother, I found myself being the one confident enough to slowly open our bedroom door. Then, propelled by a morbid curiosity mixed with growing unease, I crept towards the stairway door and listened through it. But now, the voice had stopped. A sudden chilling silence filled the air, broken only by the distant murmur of the house. I whispered to Keith that Mom must have walked away. And again, he just reiterated, "That's not Mom." I kept telling him to shut up, that he was scaring me, but a cold dread was beginning to creep into my own heart. I unlocked the stairway door, the click sounding impossibly loud in the stillness, and slowly, painstakingly, pulled it open, inch by agonizing inch, trying to avoid making any noise, any betraying creak. And when the door was open just enough for me to peek through the opening, at the very bottom of the stairs, it was clear as day, the silhouette of a person, a woman. But right away, with an undeniable, chilling certainty, I knew it was not our Mom. Her posture, her stillness was all wrong. Whoever it was, she saw me, because she said, her voice still a quiet whisper, but now directed clearly at me, "Hi, sweetie. Come down." Immediately, my blood ran cold. I slammed the door shut and locked it, the loud thud echoing through the quiet house. Then I stumbled back into our bedroom and locked that door as well. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot and stinging, and I started to cry, silent sobs shaking my small frame. Keith, his face equally terrified now, kept repeating, "I told you, I told you." We both looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between us. We needed to wake our parents. We both agreed to start screaming as loud as we possibly could to wake them up. So on 3, we started stomping on the floor and screaming as loud as we possibly could, our young voices piercing the stillness of the night. It didn't take long for our parents to barge up the stairs, their heavy footsteps thundering, pounding on the locked door of our bedroom. At first, our dad was furious about the door being locked, his voice sharp with annoyance. But as soon as we let them in, they saw that I'd been crying, my face streaked with tears, and that both of us were genuinely disturbed, shaking with fear about something profound. They listened intently to our frantic, breathless account. My mom was particularly concerned after we finished, her face pale, telling us she was absolutely not at the bottom of the stairs, and she was certainly not calling our names. She asked what the woman looked like, trying to gather details, but all we could say was that we couldn't tell, only that it wasn't her. Meanwhile, I remember our dad, his usual stern demeanor replaced by a tense urgency, running downstairs to, I guess, look around for the woman, to confront the unseen intruder. After a bit, our mom kissed us goodnight again, her touch a little more lingering, and I'm pretty sure she told us to lock the doors, which was a first. I was too young to fully catch on, but it seemed as if our parents knew exactly who it could have been, a dark, unspoken history hinted at in their worried glances. Keith and I looked out the window when we heard the doorbell ring after a while, its chime muffled, and we saw a police car outside, its blue lights flashing silently. We wanted to go downstairs, to peek, to understand, but we stayed put, glued to the window. I remember we begged our parents to tell us who it was and what happened, but our parents would always deflect, always say they didn't know, their faces carefully neutral. They would also say they're proud of us for not going downstairs, for our bravery. Personally, I think they did know who it was, and to save my brother and I from any kind of further trauma or fear, they just never told us. Because the last time I saw my parents for dinner, just a few weeks ago, I asked them about it again, trying to get to the bottom of the decades-old mystery, and they still shrugged it off as some random intruder, but that never ever explained how that woman knew our names. It's a chilling detail that still keeps me up at night.
This happened when I was 16. I was still in high school, without a car yet, so I was at the mercy of my parents driving me around or just walking if my destination was close. It was a weekend, and my friend Haley was having some of our friends over since her parents weren't home. My mom drove me to her house. Haley lived close, about a 3-minute drive and a 20-minute walk. My mom was single at the time, and she also liked to go out, so she told me that if she's out late, I should just walk or get a ride home, which usually meant she was going on a date. A few of our girlfriends were at Haley's house, Tina, Courtney, and Belle. The 5 of us hung out in her backyard for a few hours, the evening air warm and filled with laughter, until some boys from our school unexpectedly showed up. By unexpectedly, I mean Haley didn't tell me she was inviting them, and I was instantly annoyed. The reason was one of the boys who showed up was a boy I had some annoying history with and really didn't want to see. Haley thought she was being cute and sneaky by inviting him there against my knowledge because for some reason she wanted him and I to work things out. It was just an awkward mess. There were 4 boys and 5 girls, including me, so eventually I just decided I wasn't really feeling it. After a while, I left. I'm sure after I left, some of the others started to leave shortly after because it was already getting late, but I just didn't want to be around those boys. I made sure to let Haley know how pissed off I was over text as I was walking home. She kept texting back, "OMG, come back," and apologizing. I forgave her, but I still just wanted to go home, to the comfort of my own space. I walked for about 5 minutes, the streetlights casting long shadows, until I slowed down. I thought I heard footsteps behind me. When I purposefully slowed my pace further, I confirmed it. I heard footsteps that weren't mine. I turned around, my heart giving a little jump, and there was a middle-aged man with a hood pulled up over his head and his hands buried deep in his hoodie pocket. He was smiling, a wide, unsettling grin, looking directly at me and said, "How you doing?"
I responded, "Hi," my voice a little tight, and just turned and kept walking. We were in the suburbs. People walk around, it's not unheard of, even if it was getting late. 5 more minutes passed as I walked, the sound of his footsteps a rhythmic counterpoint to my own. Every time I'd glance back, that man would still be behind me, more or less the same distance away, maybe a little closer each time I looked. It was not a straight path home. I'd have to make multiple turns onto intersecting roads to get to my house, and with each turn I made, he was still there, a persistent, unyielding shadow. I was texting my friends about it, my fingers flying frantically across the screen, trying to convey the growing unease. And then, the man from behind me spoke again, his voice cutting through the quiet night. "Isn't it such a nice night? Love this weather." I replied, "Yeah." My voice clipped, and that was it. I started walking just a bit faster, but not enough to draw suspicion, not enough to look like I was running away. The man spoke again, and every time he opened his mouth, a part of me died a little more inside, consumed by a growing dread. Why was he talking to me? Why was he following me? He asked, "Are you from the neighborhood?" I replied, "No," making my answer short and firm, hoping to discourage him. The man chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. I started frantically asking all my friends for help, begging them to send one of the guys to come pick me up. Ironically, the boy who I was trying to avoid earlier was now on his way to come get me. I'll just nickname him Brandon.
The man behind me then said something that changed everything, freezing the blood in my veins. He said, his voice dropping slightly, "I'm not gonna hurt you. You live by the elementary school, right?" I turned around abruptly, my face draining of color, and he stopped in his tracks. He was still smiling, but now his smile seemed more disingenuous, more sinister, a predatory grin. I screamed, "Leave me alone," and started to run, pure terror propelling my legs. I heard the man running behind me, his footsteps gaining, catching up to me. At that point, it was my life on the line, so I started screaming bloody murder, my voice raw and desperate, screaming, help me, for everyone in their houses to wake up. And he, the man, dropped his nice guy facade and snarled, "Shut up, you little bitch!" My screams definitely scared him off because he obviously didn't want a bunch of witnesses about to come out of their houses. He quickly turned and ran away, disappearing into the darkness. I saw some lights in the houses around me turn on. One couple came out of their house, their faces bewildered, and I explained, breathless, I almost got kidnapped. I stayed there, shaking, in front of their house until Brandon arrived to pick me up. He drove me home. It was only like a 1-minute drive after that. My mom wasn't home. She was still out and wasn't answering my texts. I didn't want to be alone, not after that, so I invited Brandon in to stay the night. I know he was the happiest camper alive, getting to stay over, but it didn't end there. We were up late, just talking and reminiscing about old times, trying to process what had happened, when we both heard footsteps circling the house. My room in that house was upstairs, facing the backyard. We then heard the gate to the backyard opening, a soft, metallic click. My mom would never enter through the backyard, so something was definitely off. I held back from yelling out, "Mom," and instead Brandon and I just looked out the window, watching, our hearts pounding. We didn't hear any more sounds. We were expecting to see someone walking around the yard, but instead we both heard a man's voice say, low and chilling, "I see you up there." I let out a very audible gasp and instinctively stepped away from the window, pulling Brandon with me. Brandon yelled out something along the lines of, "We're calling the cops, you freak." And that's exactly what we did. The chilling fact that this man knew where I lived, he probably knew who I was. What if he knew I was going to Haley's house? Brandon did a lot of the talking on the phone with 911, his voice surprisingly steady. Looking back, I know he tried really hard to be the man in the situation, to be strong for me, and I appreciated that more than words could say. I was honestly so happy he came inside. The cops showed up quickly, their presence just made me feel safer, a wave of relief washing over me. Even just giving them a description of this man made me feel better, like at least something was being done. My mom got home soon after, completely freaked out as well. They kept a police car parked on the block for a few hours as a deterrent, its presence a silent guardian. Thankfully, from there on, I didn't do any walking at night. I was even scared to go into our backyard after that. My mom had our uncle come over and installed an entire security camera system. He made no effort in hiding them. They were on full display, big and obvious, designed to deter that creepy man and any other creep from coming to that house. I'm glad to say that the story ended there because this incident also prompted my mom to sell that house about a year later, just because she hated seeing me living in constant fear within those walls.
We never found out who that man was, a chilling mystery that remains unsolved.